Welcome to News9 and you are watching On Point. Today we have two On Points. On Point 1 is on why Zohran Mamdani's win in New York City matters. On Point 2 is on Rahul Gandhi's H-bomb revelations on the eve of the assembly elections in Bihar. And now let's take a quick look at the headlines.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा के संग त्योहार की उमंग.
EC data reveals abnormal rise in voters across West Bengal's border districts between 2002 and 2025, exceeding the state's average growth of 67%. Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal says India-US trade talks progressing well, adds deliberations on sensitive issues taking time. India to scale down direct Russian crude import from December, move after new US sanctions on Russian oil giant Rosneft and Lukoil take effect. At least 7 people dead after UPS plane crashes in Louisville, Kentucky. Crash comes soon after takeoff bound for Honolulu.
एसोसिएट स्पॉन्सर बैंक ऑफ बड़ौदा के संग त्योहार की उमंग.
His brand of liberal socialism has hit a home run in New York. Polling over 1 million votes, Zohran Mamdani has become the first Muslim mayor of New York and the youngest person in over a century to lead the largest city in the United States. Mamdani's overwhelming victory got a Bollywood spin as Dhoom Machale, the title track from Dhoom, began to play at the end of the victory speech. As the song played in background, Mamdani walked to his wife, Rama Doabji, for a hug. He was later joined by his parents, scholar Mahmood Mamdani and filmmaker Meera Nair on stage. New York City's newly elected mayor invoked Jawaharlal Nehru's historic Tryst with Destiny address in his victory speech. During the speech, Mamdani said there was no space for Islamophobia to win an election in New York. During his 30-minute speech, Mamdani also evoked the American immigrant dream in New York.
In this moment of political darkness, New York will be the light. Here, we believe in standing up for those we love. Whether you are an immigrant, a member of the trans community, one of the many black women that Donald Trump has fired from a federal job, a single mom still waiting for the cost of groceries to go down, or anyone else with their back against the wall, your struggle is ours too. And we will build a city hall that stands steadfast alongside Jewish New Yorkers and does not waver in the fight against the scourge of anti-Semitism. Where the more than 1 million Muslims know that they belong. Not just in the 5 boroughs of this city, but in the halls of power. No more will New York be a city where you can traffic in Islamophobia and win an election. New York will remain a city of immigrants, a city built by immigrants, powered by immigrants, and as of tonight, led by an immigrant. So hear me, President Trump, when I say this. To get to any of us, you will have to get through all of us.
Now, let me tell you the 10 big takeaways from Mamdani's victory. Zohran Mamdani got the most votes since the 1960s. In all, more than 2 million New Yorkers cast their ballots. Mamdani won more than 1 million votes. He is the first candidate to do so since 1969. CBS News and Mamdani secured, which CBS News said that the Mamdani secured 40.4% of the votes ahead of independent Andrew Cuomo at 41.6% and Republican Curtis Sliwa at 7%. Mamdani created the contours of his own new Democratic coalition. He ran up 40-point margins in Brooklyn's affluent brownstone belt, swept northern Manhattan and secured narrower margins in historically black and Latino areas of Brooklyn and Bronx. He also made progress in working class black and Latino neighborhoods. In New York City, Mamdani's win marked the second time this year he defeated former Governor Andrew Cuomo, first in the Democratic primary and then in the general election, with Cuomo running as an independent backed by Trump. Mamdani's focus on driving down costs was a hit with voters. If he delivers on his promise, it would turn New York City into a blueprint for cities across country where the cost of living has soared. Now, thanks in part to the strong pro-Palestine statements, a CNN exit poll showed that Mamdani received just about 30% of the Jewish vote, while Cuomo and Sliwa together received a total of 70% of votes. Those numbers are effectively the inverse of the Jewish votes in the decades of national elections, which have usually seen the Democratic candidate getting between 70% and 80% of the Jewish votes. Pro-Palestinian positions may have fueled Mamdani's politics and established his earlier volunteer base, but they didn't win him the election. The New Yorkers who voted for him overwhelmingly said cost of living is their top issue. Mamdani's victory was accompanied by a string of Democratic successes elsewhere. Voters up and down the East Coast delivered Democrats a sweep in a vivid show of discontent with the President Donald Trump nearly a second year in his second term. In New Jersey, Mickey Sherrill busted apart the coalition Trump and a Republican rival, former state lawmaker Jack Ciattarelli, that had put together. And in Virginia, moderate Abigail Spanberger turned in a strong Democratic performance and coasted to victory. Donald Trump posted a chilling message on his social media handle after Zohran Mamdani won the New York mayoral polls. Without saying too much, Trump wrote, "And so it begins." During this victory speech, Mamdani addressed Trump directly and said, "Donald Trump, since I know you are watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up."
If anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
Mamdani's campaign has drawn support from politicians like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the New York representatives, both whom appeared with him at rallies across the city. Still, not all New York Democrats got behind him. Both New York Senator Chuck Schumer and the Kirsten Gillibrand notably did not make endorsements in the race. Some top Democrats have been reticent to embrace the 34-year-old, fearing his staunch support for the Palestinian rights that could alienate their voters in the midterm elections in 2026. Now, Mamdani did a lot of things. For example, Mamdani's campaign was unique. Not only Mamdani was doing crowdfunding, but he was also making people come out of their Twitter zone, out on the street. So not only he was asking the money, but he was asking for their time also, which was the most unique way of creating a campaign. So this brings me to the big question: why did Mamdani win? And on this issue, I'm joined by Makran Paranjpe, author, historian, sociologist, a noted writer. He joins me live from Miami, United States of America. Ambassador Meera Shankar, former Indian Ambassador to the United States of America. Thank you so much, ma'am. And Professor Swaran Singh, School of International Studies, JNU. Let me straight away go to Ambassador Meera Shankar. Ma'am, your take on why Mamdani won?
I think his focus on making New York affordable and dealing with the cost of living crisis in New York was the key element, because he's promised to give free bus rides to people, to freeze rents, which have been rising exorbitantly, to build new public housings to reduce pressure on housing in New York, to provide free childcare, and to open state-run grocery stores in areas which are called food deserts, where there aren't really fresh grocery stores around. I think this message resonated because as of now, the working class, if you saw in the last election, shifted very much towards Trump. It was the right which actually channelized their frustration through the protectionist and anti-immigrant message that President Trump embraced during his campaign. But that really hasn't helped ordinary people, because wage rises have stopped. Inflation relative to wage increases, I think, has been high over the past several years, not just under Trump. And so this is at the heart of many people's concerns. Secondly, there is a dissatisfaction also at the way in which President Trump has been pushing his agenda without any concern for constitutional niceties or the impact it might have, on families or individuals. So the use of the federal guards, the kind of chasing or, pulling of people off the streets to deport them, I think all this also hasn't gone down well. But I think Mamdani also mobilized, because he had nearly 90 to 100,000 volunteers who went street to street, carrying his message. So he personalized it, and his ability to get youth out, both in terms of volunteering and in terms of voting, because he's managed to capture the youth vote and the youth imagination in this election.
Okay.
Having said this, I would also like to say that the East Coast is not necessarily representative of America. It's been traditionally more liberal. Both the West and Eastern coasts have been outward looking towards the world, so more liberal. Doesn't mean that this kind of message might resonate in Middle America or Southern America, which is the MAGA heartland. So I think we have to wait and see. But within the Democratic Party, where there has been a great division over whether to embrace progressive politics or not, I think this will push the needle somewhat left of center.
Okay. Let me go across to Mr. Paranjpe. Mr. Paranjpe, your thought, is it a churn or is it a one-off victory from Mamdani? Mamdani is a South Asian, Indian descent, half Hindu, half Muslim, but stresses his Muslim side throughout. So, Mamdani has a broader connect with a lot of immigrants from this part of the world. What is your take on his win, and will it have a larger impact on the American politics, or is just one-off victory in a sanctuary city of the United States of America?
Well, I want to bring in an additional point to what the ambassador said. There's a tremendous anti-incumbency, to use an Indian phrase, in New York, because the Cuomo family has been running the Democratic Party in the state as well. Andrew Cuomo was the governor, he was disgraced and removed. So New York is a democratic city. So it's a question of which kind of Democrat was going to win. And Mamdani mobilized the youth. He's only 34 years old. So he represents hope, as well as a new kind of populism. It's competitive populism, because most of his socialist policies are not going to work almost anywhere outside New York. New York, let's remember, is a very special kind of city. It's got more than 8 million people. Its GDP is 2.3 trillion dollars. It's like more than half of India's GDP, just one city of just 8 million people. So it's a little bit for Indian viewers like Delhi and what Aam Aadmi Party was doing with Kejriwal. In fact, free bus rides and some of these other freebies and blandishments are straight out of the Indian playbook. But this kind of socialism is very difficult to work elsewhere because, see, New York is one of the very few cities, probably the only one, which charges income tax. So New Yorkers pay federal tax, they pay state tax, and they pay a city tax. So the war chest, the money that Mamdani has to dish out these socialist freebies is immense. And that's why some of these populist measures may work in New York but not elsewhere. The other important thing that you mentioned, it is a churn certainly in the Democratic Party because nobody has enthused the party as much, as far as I can tell, after Obama. This is the new, brown hope for the Democrats. And he's pitting himself in a very astute way against Donald Trump, and of course, Trump is very old, more than 80, and almost 80 or by the time he finishes, he'll be one of the oldest presidents. So, it is the hope of the youth, but also the delusions, because I think that socialism we've seen economically almost everywhere doesn't work. And this redistribution of wealth and his far left ideology is going to turn off a lot of people within the Democratic Party as well. So it's very interesting times, and it's like a fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. And Mamdani is at the center of this fight.
Professor, he did one thing very intelligently. Now, that's hindsight. A lot of people involve their constituents through crowdfunding, but this time he got his supporters out from the Twitter zone and said, I need your time. So he got them out of the drawing rooms and he said, you can earn these things. For example, you can earn a band or you can earn a cup, but you're going to work for me. You can't buy it for me. So he made them spend time. So they were out on the street. But another thing which Mamdani has done, which really surprises me, rich people always control politics globally in all democracies. You can't wish them away. But most in America, how did he defeat the rich in New York? But that is something which I fail to understand. Rich people control cities like NYC. How did he get passed by these rich people?
Well, see, he's very charming. He's very communicative. And, rich people, as you know better than me, they do business with everyone. So who knows what the back-end deals are. I heard an interview with Jamie Dimon, the head of JP Morgan Chase. He said, I'm going to call up Mamdani when he wins, and I'm going to tell him that, look, we're here to help you. So Wall Street is smart, Mamdani is smart. So they're going to come up with some arrangement. But the real issue here is that they didn't have a candidate who could defeat Mamdani. Andrew Cuomo, by the way, it's amazing that Andrew Cuomo came, he cast 850,000 votes to Mamdani's millions. So, if they had more time, they were simply not prepared for this phenomenon. And, as you said, it's a very innovative way of getting people involved. And the younger people, there's a huge disparity in America, not only between the rich and the poor, but also between the young and the old people. And the older people are rich, the younger people can't afford housing, they can't afford, in fact, sometimes even groceries. People are being laid off. Amazon is laying people off. Everybody, all the MAGA 7 companies are laying people off because of AI. So the young people want to rally around something. And I'm amazed at how he invokes Eugene Debs, the last presidential socialist candidate from 100 years ago. So he wants to push America towards socialism in a way that I'm almost sure that the rest of America will not appreciate it, especially the middle so-called Rust Belt, which J.D. Vance represents. So it's going to be a very interesting fight between two young men going forward.
Okay. Professor Swaran Singh, what does it mean for the Democratic Party? When the Trump came, he took the Republicans to the right, to the extreme right, This guy, with his support, he's taking it to the left. Even the Democrats are uncomfortable. So what does it mean for the Democratic Party there? Are they going to deal with leaders like Mamdani in future?
I think they will have to, because Mamdani seems to be providing a very forceful direction to the entire party. But let me say, this is part of the churn, even when he is the most visible face in that churn. You mentioned governors being elected in Virginia and New Jersey, also the lieutenant governor in Virginia. That they represent a whole spectrum of ideological variations, but they nevertheless are all younger, and they all share the common fear or anxiety or discomfort with President Trump. And that resonates, I think, with the several voters on the ground, particularly when you want to come up with very, very populist formulations like free childcare, universal health care, free bus rides, freezing on renting, city-run grocery. Many of these look like very, quintessentially typical Indian political kind of the populism in some ways. So is his door-to-door campaign, for example. His quoting of Jawaharlal Nehru's Tryst with Destiny speech. But let me also say that other than in some ways reflecting the nature of South Asian or Indian politics, he also in some ways reflects the politics of President Trump himself. Exactly opposite, of course, the other side of the kind of emerging divide. He is edging on aggression in that sense. You saw his speech. And, he has enormous energy. He's able to use social media like a megaphone. In that sense, there is a churn of which he is an outcome, but he seems to be the most visible part of that new churn where, for example, leaders like Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they have not really created space for the younger generation. There are so many young governors, including, for example, in California. So there is possibly this restlessness among leadership, which is younger leadership within the Democratic Party. And here is an opportunity where Mamdani is sticking his neck out. You mentioned the reluctance of several Democratic leaders to endorse him, including President Obama, who finally said, I'll be a sounding board.
Okay.
But he's pushing to the edge, and therefore he's most visible and potentially most powerful in, turning around the Democratic Party in midterm elections that we'll see next year.
Okay. Ambassador Shankar, Dhoom Machale was played. He quoted Nehru, but the fact of the matter is that he has stressed his Islamic side more than the Hindu connection. Why? Is there something which we should read into, or is just pure play local politics that he exercised?
I think it's been a part of his identity for some time, and he's not been diffident about it. It's not something new. And I think he embraces both his inheritance, if you will. And I think this is something which, he wanted New Yorkers to know and to elect him despite that. I think that was important because he was not diffident about asserting his identity. But at the same time, I would just like to add one thing here, that there's an inherent limitation to Mamdani's ambitions because he was born in Uganda and he cannot stand for the post of President of the United States. So his ambition will have to be limited below that. And also, once he actually begins to govern, there's a legal framework within which he will have to operate. For instance, any tax changes would need the approval of the State Assembly of New York and of the Governor of New York. So he will have to work with them. Similarly, in terms of rent freezes, there is a 9-member rental guidelines board which has to operate taking economic conditions into account. He gets to appoint them, but he doesn't determine what their outcome is going to be. So there are inherent checks and balances which will operate, and he will have to operate within that ambit, maybe fine-tune some of his proposals, like free bus rides, perhaps only for those who earn below a certain amount and so on. So the checks and balances of the US system will operate to impose a dose of reality.
Okay, I have only 2 minutes left, a minute to Professor Paranjpe and then a minute to Professor Zohran Singh. So my question to Professor Paranjpe is very, very simple and straight. So what happens in context of the Indian diaspora, which has been very closely aligned with the Trump, I'm not going to use the word Hindu organization, but the larger Indian diaspora from India, which is very close to Donald Trump. What happens with that? How do they work with Mamdani?
Oh, it's not true that they're closely aligned with Trump. I think over 70% of the Indian diaspora is very strongly democratic. But the Hindu organizations, as you rightly said, have a lot of difficulty with Mamdani. I don't think he's owned up his mother's side, the Hindu side of his heritage at all. In fact, he went to a Ganesh temple and didn't even take off his shoes. He was photographed there. And on Twitter, I saw a lot of Hindu organizations protesting. So I think that he'll have to mend his fences there. He's a kind of proud Islamist, if I may say so. And the alliance between Islamists and leftists, as it plays out, whether it's on the Palestine question or on other questions around the world, is obviously a troubling or a sore point for several Hindu organizations in the US and possibly elsewhere as well.
Okay. Professor Zohran Singh, what does it mean for the India Connect? Do we have a pro-India voice there in Mamdani in a larger assessment? Will he mean business with us in longer run when people come to power? Or do you think that the position he has taken will cause more embarrassment?
I think we all know in all democratic elections, electioneering is one thing, and then invariably leaders begin to mend their ways over a period of time. During election itself, you have seen his views changing on Jewish diaspora. He's been trying to sort of placate them. And he understands India connection is very important. He has not underlined it, neither has India kind of emphasized that connect when we are having debates in India on Mamdani. He has been very clear about his identity being a Muslim first.
Yes.
And he's very, unapologetic about it. Whether his connection with India will grow in coming times, to me, that's more likely. If he wants to find a greater space in Democratic Party, then he will have to find ways and means how to connect with Indian diaspora across, ethnicity or religion or language and other things. It is an important diaspora in United States. So if he wants to work all his way up in future, we will see that also changing over a period of time. And I'm sure that he will kind of become more modest about some of his commentaries that have rattled people in India.
My take, sir, is I know you people are much more learned in context of what's happening there. I think outsiders are taking over. Trump was an outsider and Mamdani is an outsider, and both have broken into the turf. He has defeated a political royalty in New York, and Trump himself was an outsider. He broke into the couple of families who control the Republican Party. Thank you all of you for joining me on this conversation. So this is all I had on Point, but please don't go away, because On Point 2 is on Rahul Gandhi's H-bomb revelations on vote chori in Haryana, but after a short break.